All right. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining from. So thank you for joining for the Azure Community Singapore once again in this month. So today also we have a great speaker who is also a founding member of our community and also from .NET Foundation. So he's actually Chun Lin. Some of you might have heard about him, right? So he's going to actually discuss a very much important topic today with regards to CI CD pipelines and how you can use Azure CI CD pipelines to do unit testing for stored procedures and any SQL database changes. So I think we have a lot of joiners joining now. So if you have not subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe to .NET SG channel. So then you can actually get more information about future sessions. So without further ado, right, so let's get started. And over to you, Chun Lin.
Hi, thank you, Dilepa. I think testing.
All good?
I can hear myself.
Yeah, all good.
Testing? Okay, good. So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Dilepa, for the introduction. Yeah, good evening, everyone from Singapore, and especially members from our .NET Community Singapore, as well as SCS, Azure Community Singapore. So for those who are joining us from other places in the world, thank you very much for tuning in as well. So this meetup will actually be recorded and made available later on our YouTube channel with the same link. Hence, if you cannot make it for our full session now, don't worry. What you need to do is simply bookmark this video, or even better, subscribe to our channel so that you can rewatch this video or other videos from other speakers later. So my name is Chun Lin. I'm currently a developer working in Singapore. I'm also contributing in .NET Foundation open source projects and maintaining our two community groups in Singapore together with our dear friend Dilepa. So actually tonight the session is we get help from .NET Foundation, who actually help us to broadcast our event to the entire world. So in order to thank .NET Foundation to help us out, let me do a quick shout out. So if you are interested to join any other .NET related events in the whole world, you can join their meetup as well. Okay, just sign up over here, meetup.com/.NET virtual user group. Okay, I think that's all. That's all the slides. By the way, I'm actually I have all my content done through the demo, and I'm actually using Surface Go now. So I have to make sure that my speech, my sharing can finish before this battery runs out. Okay, so let's pray. Hopefully all things go well later during the demo. Okay, let's start. So okay, I shouldn't show this to first now. Okay, so I guess many of us have been dealing with databases one way or another in our career or hobby projects. So some of you may be familiar with the store procedures as well. So to keep it simple, a store procedure in SQL Server, let me see whether I can pull it up, which is here. It's a group of one or more like the transact SQL statements. So based on the statements in the procedure and the parameters we pass in, it can perform one or multiple data manipulations on our databases, and it will return some values or tables, etc. So it allows us to pass the same statements multiple times and thus enabling the reusability. Okay, so then here comes a question. A store procedure normally can be very lengthy. This one is just for demo, so it's still quite short. But normally, store procedure can be very lengthy. So how could we test our store procedure effectively? Or rather, how do we unit test our store procedure? Right. So first of all, we all know about unit testing, right? According to one of the book that I have, The Art of Unit Testing, which is very good. A unit test is basically an automated piece of code which invokes the unit of work being tested. So it will check some assumption about the result of that unit. So unit testing can be very important because if we only found out the bugs in our store procedure in a later stage of development, then it can be very challenging to roll back the data changes that have been made to our database. So it's not similar like when we write unit tests for our .NET application, the web application, for example, that you can easily roll back. But for database, normally people don't pay so much attention on unit testing it, and end up some people receive call at night complaining that the data has been corrupted. Then there's a hard time to correct the problem back, because it's not just to correct the program or correct the store procedure, but the data that has been corrupted need to be dealt with as well. So this is why I think testing of store procedure, be it even if you don't do unit testing, but must at least do some like even manual testing and so on. But if it's possible, it's still the best case to go for automated unit testing. So in this session, I will spend, I think, about half an hour, maybe a bit more, to share with you how we can use tools like Visual Studio and Ssdt, which is also known as SQL Server Data Tools, to easily unit test our store procedure locally or even on Azure Devops pipeline. So this is Visual Studio. I think it should be familiar to all of you here, especially the .NET developers joining us tonight. So I will not talk about the Visual Studio, but instead let me share what Ssdt is. So Ssdt is basically a development tool for building SQL Server relational databases, so including databases in Azure SQL. So with Ssdt, we can work directly with a connected database instance, be it on or off premise. So we can use Ssdt transaction SQL design capabilities to build, to debug, and to maintain and refactor our databases. Okay, so where do we get Ssdt installed? So you launch your Visual Studio, this one, the installer. When you scroll down, you should be able to see this section called Other Toolsets. So in the good old days, we have to download Ssdt separately and install it with a standalone installer. So starting with Visual Studio 2017, the functionality of creating database projects has been integrated into our dear friend Visual Studio. So I think now less excuse of not using it. So there's no longer a need to install the Ssdt standalone installer. What you need to do is just come here and select this data storage and processing. Okay, and then at the right side, you can see the SQL Server Data Tools. I think by default it's not checked. So what you need to do is just to check it and press OK, then you will install it. So now let's assume we have all that installed. So how do we get started? So in this session, we will assume that we have an existing database hosted on Azure SQL Server. Actually, it's over here. So, so let me quickly show you how our sample database, which is named, which is here, DB core, over here. So it has some tables here. Let me expand it. The key table in our session today will be this spending table. Okay. So it's quite cool, right? You can see the schema of the database of your table directly in Visual Studio. So this table comes with columns to store like amount, currency, and description of items that we spend money on. And then we also have a few store procedures above, which will create, read, update, and delete records of the table. Okay. So these are the demo store procedure that we will use today to show how we can unit test them. Okay. Since we have our database ready on our Azure SQL already, then on Visual Studio, when you create the database project, you can directly import our database from Azure to the database project over here. So actually you can, I think, okay, you can right click the database project and you choose the first option, import. Okay, then you will import all your database schema, your function, your store procedure to the project. By the way, you can only do this after you install the Ssdt. So once the import is done, then we should see something like this. So as you can see, I actually do all the database related operation on Visual Studio directly now. So I don't use the SSMS, the SQL management tool. So yeah, it's quite integrated into Visual Studio already. So now is time for writing a unit test. Okay, let's say we would like to unit test the ad spending. This one, okay, this one. So what we need to do is simply come here, right click, and then choose create unit test, which is the 6 options over here. I can't mouse over because I'm on the surface. So yeah, so create unit test option. So if this is the first unit test that you are writing, Visual Studio will prompt and ask for the database connection string, and then create a test project for you automatically. So it will create the projects over here, this one. So once the project has been successfully created, we will be given a template unit test for that store procedure that we have created. So it will look something like this. Okay. So basically, the unit test for store procedure contains of 3 parts. It's similar like when we write unit test for C#, we have the setup, then we have the test cases, and then we have teardown. So in SQL side, we have actually pre-test, test, and post-test. So test, which is what we are looking at now, is the actual test body. Say, so we have all the test cases over here. And then pre-test is something that we do before we run our test. So for example, here, I make sure that my table is clean. So I do a truncate first. And post-test is what will be done after our test is done. So I do a truncate again so that I make sure every time my unit test is run, the data will be clean after that. So let's see the cool thing over here. So this is just a very simple like how we can test our insert statement in our store procedure. So add spending actually is there's a one insert statement over here. And then after it insert, it get the ID from scope entity and it return as a table together with some messages and so on. So what we need to do is just that we pass in the parameter, which is all these 3, execute it, and then we make sure that when we select the result out, we should be able to get something. So here I select the top one. By right, if the store procedure has no problem, it should return what I have inserted. So how do we do that? How do we do the assert? Okay. So as you can see at the bottom, over here. So there are a few conditions over here, test conditions so-called. So for example, if you check the transaction status code returned by the store procedure to be not 1, okay. So these are some like the assert that you can write. And for example, you must make sure that must be only 1 row returned, and the value must be what we have inserted. So how do we do all this? Firstly, you can check, you can select from here. So there's a whole list of things to be selected over here. So here I only use like row count, scalar value, but you can use more. Once you enter it, then you can right click and choose properties. Oops. Then here is where you put in like the expected value, or whether it's now from which data set. Here we have 2 data set, by the way. Okay. And then from what row and what column. And interestingly, although we say, in programming, the index always starts with 0, right? But here we start with 1 for the row and column number. Okay, so why do I say we have 2 result set? The second result set is over here. So it's actually for those who are new to this unit test of store procedure, it can be a bit confusing because I have only one select statement here. How come we have result set 2 and result set 1? Okay, so which one is 1 and which one is 2? Okay, the reason why we have 2 result sets here is because there's one inside our store procedure, which is this one. And then the result set 2 should be this one. So yeah, from here you can see we can not only test the result in the store procedure, but we can also add in extra statements to test additional thing about this unit test. Okay, so I hope everyone's still okay, still following. So same thing for other tests. For example, maybe I can choose select. Yeah, select. So you key in, pass in all the parameters into the store procedures. You execute, then you return. Then we make sure that, for example, this one, make sure that the currency is still the one that we inserted. So actually, when I do this demo at home, then I realized that actually it helped me a lot because sometimes, let me see, I think it's select. Sometimes we write our store procedure like this. We put in all the things inside a string, string so-called, then we execute it like this. So one may argue that the SSMS, this one, or any IDE, should be able to help us to detect the error easily. But if one writes their store procedure in this way, then it's very hard to debug. Okay, so with SSDT unit test, you can actually print out the statement, then it will show in your test result, and you can also easily pump in the parameters and see what is the output. So previously, when I have a typo over here, I think, yeah, this line, instead of comma, I put a dot, but in the on the SMN on this side, I can't tell because it's a string, so there's no color highlighting and so on. So I using eyeball, I cannot see it. So only through unit testing, I realize, oh, this is the problem. And by printing it out, I can easily identify where it goes wrong. Yeah. So imagine you do this unit test yourself manually without using SSDT. How hard is going to for you to run the test case one by one? Okay. Besides the database project that I forgot to highlight just now. So there is a problem of teams using store procedure is that they don't really consider store procedure as part of their source control. So what do I mean by that is that, okay, you have your web services, you have your C# application, your Angular front end, and so on in your GitHub repository. But how about store procedures? Okay. By using the database project, you can actually commit this, include this together with your main projects. So every time there's a change to it, to the SQL, everything is kept track in the source control. Otherwise, if you only use this one, SQL Server Management Studio, to manage your code, then that is very hard to actually source control your store procedure. So this is one of the benefit of using database solution, database project. It's not just for unit testing. Then there's one person asked me, so if I use database project, then how do I update my SQL procedure? Do I still come here to update? No, actually you can just totally fully on Visual Studio. You just change over here, then later you deploy through CI/CD, and then the agent will supposedly help you to run and update your databases. So you don't need to, like, I know there are people still come to SSMS and run the and execute the store procedure update against their databases directly. That is actually quite dangerous. Consider you do it manually. So why not we use the tools to automate for us? So yeah, as we shared earlier, unit testing is not only about writing like the code to test our work, but it's very important to make it automatically testable. So it's I don't agree with some people always argue with, I can do it manually, but it's not a problem a lot. You can do it manually or not. When the test cases are too many and you use only your eye power to detect the errors, it's quite dangerous, especially it's a database thing. So our next move here is to automate the build, test, and release of our database on Azure Devops. So the first thing first, as I shared just now, we can make our stored procedure available on things like GitHub. So this is the, I think I make it public available so you can join in and see. So all the stored procedures are over here. So you can see the history, the changes, and everything. So once we make sure that our source code of our database project and our test project is on GitHub or GitLab or whatever, then we need to create a published profile of our database. Okay, so now I'm actually moving on to talk about how do we move this thing to Azure Devops CI CD. So as you can see here. So this thing actually what you need to do is just to right click. Let me try. Right click and choose publish, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The ninth option over here. Okay, then there will be a window pop up and I think I can click. Oh, I can't. I shouldn't click it on my surface. Okay, never mind. So we will generate the published profile. Then we can yeah, you have this pop up. Then we can create a profile for our Azure SQL. So this thing is very cool because you can directly publish your database changes through DevOps to Azure SQL without human intervention. Okay. So once we have the database profile generated, there are a few options over there that you need to pick. So I won't go into detail because it depends on how you set up your database and so on. So once we have this ready, we need to make sure by default, if I remember correctly, this file will be excluded from Git. So remember to include in the Git and publish it together so that later the build agent can pick it up and do the deployment for us. So once we have this ready, let me jump back to Azure DevOps. Okay. So here I only enable the pipelines because all my source code are on the GitHub. So these are the Devops Ci Cd pipelines that people always talk about, right? Automatically build and so on. So to automatically build web application or desktop application, we all learned before, right? It's quite common and widely discussed. But how about we use CI/CD to automatically build our database project and publish it? This one, I think not a lot of people talking about it. So actually, it's quite straightforward. It's similar like how we will do .NET desktop application deployment using DevOps. Like as you can see over here, first step is to use a NuGet, do a restore, and then build the solution. These are quite standard, but there are the three three steps which are quite different, which is these three steps. Okay. So after we build the solution, by the way, the solution means these two projects. So you include the database project, include the unit test project. So if you copy the test DB core, which is the unit test project, to the to this staging directory, and you will copy the dat pack file over, as well as the DB core profile. Okay, so why do we need the dat pack? So this one is very special because we are doing the database changes later using dat pack. That's the reason why we need it. And profile is to know where it being published to. So these three things must be copied over to this staging directory, and then we package it into our artifact. Okay, so far so good. So what we do in our build pipeline is just to build the solution, copy the file, and publish the artifact. Okay, and then the real thing comes in the release. Okay, so in the release pipeline, what we will do is, once the build pipeline is done, it will come here, and then you pass the let me show. This is where we get our artifact, which is produced in the previous build step. Then we take it from here and we continue to do our job. So here it will publish our database with the that pack. Oh, by the way, the password is here. Okay, and then it will run the test and it will publish the test result. Okay, so normally don't by right, this pipeline should connect to the staging database or development database first to run the test. So don't connect this to the live database and do the testing. Because as you can remember just now, we have those truncate statements to delete the data and so on. So yeah, the correct way is to connect this to the test database, run the test, and see the outcome. Okay, there's a very special step over here. It's called the replace tokens. Why we need to do this is because this one actually is a very unique step that I think only one MVP from Microsoft talk about this. Because in the test project, there's an app setting. I can show again. There's an app setting. App config. So here it has the two connection string. Okay, why is it two? One is for execution and one is for privilege. So execution connection string, which is used to run our test, so that it can have the same action as when the consumer consume our store procedure. Okay, and the privilege is to run all the truncate and so on. So that's why we have two. But here to keep it simple, I put it as the same and using the admin right. Okay. So this is the problem of running the unit test for database, because you need connection string, and by right your connection string should not appear in the gig. It should not be appearing in the source control. That's why the correct way actually is to replace this connection string with a token, and then only in the release pipeline we replace it back. So this is what this task do. So it will replace this token pattern with the variable over here. Okay, so this is one of the use case of this task. So this replace token, so it's very useful. Even if you are doing .NET project, this can become handy. So yeah, so this step is very important. Don't ever commit your connection string to source control. Instead, replace it in the release pipeline. And there's one more thing that I would like to highlight is that for both of the pipelines, we need to make sure that we are using the Windows and 2022. I think I tried with 2019. Some of my release and build pipeline will fail due to some errors. I think it's regarding the SSDT. So it's best if you want to try, you can choose the latest one. Okay, which is 2022 Windows. Yeah. So after all this, when we run, it will take some time. So previously I run a few already. Like this one just now, I was changing it when I was on my way. So I commit, then it will run at the background when I was walking to where I am now. So this is how each step works. I copy, then it produce an artifact over here. Yep. And then the artifact is over here. And it contains all these things. Yeah, so this is the reason why we need the publish profile to be on our source control just now. And then the release, same thing. It will pick up and do the deployment to our Azure SQL. So yeah, this is actually what they do is just to compile the changes and deploy it to our actual database. So try not to do it manually after you learn about the SSDT. Let the tools help us to do these complicated things, and won't go wrong. If it go wrong, you can actually find out in the if it goes wrong, actually it tells you. So you see, oh, there's a red mark. Why is it? Oh, it's because of the test fail. So from here, you actually can tell, my test case or my store procedure have something, some bugs that I need to fix before going live. So this is better than you eyeball your codes, right? And in addition, beside this, you will also receive email from Azure Devops telling, what has failed, and in which commit. So it link the error report with your commit as well, so you can quickly identify the code change, which part of the code change has the problem. Yeah, so this is the cool thing of using DevOps. Otherwise, you have to find back your history to see which part of the code actually causes the problem. Let me close this. Okay. Let me see. Oh, another thing for those who are using Azure SQL, you will learn something called the firewall. So by default, public cannot access the database unless you open up the IP address specifically. So the good thing about using DevOps is that DevOps is considered as part of Azure. So you don't need to open the IP address, sort of sacrificing your network security. So you just keep it as default, and DevOps should be able to talk to your SQL database directly. So this is one cool thing about it. And let me see. And then finally, there's this test report. So beside email, beside the log, you can also see the report. You also can get one report and see which part of your code actually has problem at what time, and so on. So yeah, I basically actually managed to finish in 30 minutes. I think that's end for my sharing today. So once again, what I have shared today is basically two main things. First, if you are doing store procedure projects, please use database projects. He not only allows you to create unit tests automatically, like with a template for you, it also allows you to manage your code through source control. Okay, so don't like create a folder then put your store procedure inside as a way to manage your code. That's not a effective and foolproof way of doing things. Yeah, it will cause troubles later. So this is one thing, but to have all this, you need to install the SSDT, which is a very cool tool because it can run in your Visual Studio directly without actually using SSMS. So secondly is about the Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is not only about like publishing your web projects or desktop applications. It can also use for database deployment. Just that there are a few things that you need to pay attention to is that always use the latest agent, or if you are rich, you can build your own build agent, then you have no such worry. And then secondly is to make sure that you don't commit your connection string to the source control. Instead, use the token replace to edit it in the pipeline. So doing all this actually it help you to keep track. When do you publish? Actually, you can add in the reviewer process in your release pipeline also, so that like for example here, so that only certain person like your team lead approved, then can proceed to be deployed and so on. So this is better than inside a team, then you call your team lead, hey, I want to deploy now, can you help me? This kind of thing can be reduced. So it can be fully automated and lesser human intervention in this process. So I think that's all. Oh yeah, finally. So in case you couldn't catch most of the things, because I think I talk a bit fast, I actually have this project over here on the GitHub. I think it's public, and then you can access and see how I do the store procedure and the unit test. It's github.com/gore-Chun Lin, my name, /lunar.spending. Yeah, and then there's a link here. So I actually write details about the steps that I go through just now. Guys, this one is even more lengthy. So if you want to go through step by step and see and learn it for yourself, you can come here to read the full tutorial on how to do this. So before I pass back to Dilepa, let me do a quick shout out with this MVP, Damien, I think. So he actually inspired me to learn more about this SSDT. But if you, in case you want to find alternative of SSDT, there's this thing called TSQLT. This framework is more designed for DBA, and in his video he talked about it as well. So yeah, you can check it out also. Yeah, I think that's all from my side. Back to you, Dilepa. Is Dilepa there?
Yep. Okay, Chun Lin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think there's a question. I have a question. Let me share it with you. Check your teams.
Okay.
Yeah. So Buddhika is asking this question. Okay, I think you got that, right? I sent it.
Still blank. I already see doctor here. DR.
Can you see that? The chat?
No.
I think the chat, click the chat. I think you should be able to see.
Oh, but I can see from my phone. It's
Okay,
from
cool.
Budika Vimala Sena.
Yep, correct.
Oh, hello, I have a question. Sorry, it's not very related to topic today. If we have EF core DB migration, can we use Azure Devops to release the changes? The answer is okay. So EF core, actually, if I show you again my project, you will see one table very familiar to you. This thing, EF migration history. Okay, so actually I do try out the EF core, and because it depends if your EF core is code first, which is I'm more familiar with. So in my previous project, I always use the EF core code first. Of course, that one definitely can use Azure DevOps to release the changes, but the problem will come when you have a store procedure. And you have if you want to use store procedure together with AF core, yeah, you have to go through the way that I shared just now. But if you don't, if you are using purely on AF core, yes, you can use Azure Devops to publish the changes. Yeah, because all your schema should be defined as models in your classes and C# classes, and all the logic actually inside your API, your controller and so on, all your services. So yeah, the DB changes should all be handled properly. You can just use the Azure DevOps to publish. And then I think there is one step there may be a problem, which is running the DB migration script. Because that one is a PowerShell script. You can actually run it using DevOps task as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think there's a task over here. Yeah, you can run the PowerShell script to do the DB migration or DB update, unless you have a very complicated scenario that you can share over here. Otherwise, I think for normal cases, there should be no problem. Like after you do everything, then you just run a PowerShell task to update your databases. Hopefully, this answer your question. Please correct me, because there's been a long time, a few years, I never used EF core already. So hopefully I answer your question correctly.
Okay.
Because this is what I remember. There are the two challenges. One is the PowerShell. How do we run and when do we run? Secondly is if we mix use with store procedure, how do we source control our store procedure together with EF core? So for these two questions, one, use this. Secondly, use the DB project. Yeah, then it should be okay. Please correct me, because yeah.
All right. There's no more questions. Butika, if you have follow-up questions, you can ask related to that, right? So I'm gonna wait for a couple of more seconds.
Or you all can come here to leave a comment.
Yeah.
I will
So
try to read them. Or on YouTube.
correct.
Then yeah.
If you have any question, you can actually type in the comments after the video is published. Yeah, if there's any other questions, you can ask. I'm gonna give you a couple of more seconds.
By the way, hi to Placenta Mortani and Tiong Chia.
Yeah.
Hi.
So yeah, until you are typing your questions, maybe you have other questions, right? So just to give you a shout out, right? So make sure to remember that subscribe to our channel .NET SG. So every time we have new session coming up, so you will be notified. And also make sure to go to our meetup page, and then make sure to join the meetup page. So every time we have new sessions coming up, you can actually get to know.
And Dilepa, you are looking for another co-organizer?
Yeah, if you want to be an organizer, or maybe even as a speaker, right? If you want to join,
yeah,
there's another opportunity for you, right? So one of you might have great skills of organizing stuff, and then maybe you are a speaker, right? Definitely this is a great chance for you to share your knowledge, experience in a kind of a wider variety of community here in Singapore. And good thing about our community is not actually limited to Singapore, so people are joining from other places as well. So make sure to go to our website as well, right? .net.sg. And then as you can see in the screen, right, so you have two options. As a speaker you can join, and also as a co-organizer you can also join. Okay. All right, I think Buddhika said thank you for you, and yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for sharing, Chun Lin. It's really great session today, right? So we learn a lot. and I hope everyone learned a lot from Chun Lin. So if you are not a friend of him, right, you can actually share your LinkedIn maybe, or maybe you can go to his WordPress website. Yeah, and also GitHub, right? So
yeah.
So make sure to
Log
get in touch with Chun Lin, right? So you can get more and more stuff about everything. Yeah, whatever. All right. So thank you once again, Chun Lin, for contributing for the session today, and then we'll have another session in the future, probably with you, right? So, and thank you everyone for joining the session today. If you have any questions regarding the same the session, right? So you can actually share all of them with us, right, in the comments after the video is published, right? So remember that video will be published after a couple of hours, so it will be not available right away. So probably it will be in tomorrow morning, right? So yeah, and if there's anything you can reach out to me or maybe Chun Lin, right? So yeah. So with that, we are going to conclude our session for this month. So we'll have another session in the next month. So hope to see you everyone in the next month, and have a good evening, and then yeah, have a good day for joining in the morning. All right. Thank you for everyone. Thank you, Chun Lin, for joining us.
Thank you, Dilapa. See you all.
See you all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.